welcome back to MINDtalk, where we like to bridge the disconnect between what brain science knows and what people do. This week I'd like to talk about flat world thinking. Now what I mean by flat world thinking is that, hundreds and thousands of years ago, the common belief was that the world was flat, that if you sailed long enough in one particular direction, you'd fall off into the abyss. Well, we know now that that's kind of fanciful thinking. That's we kind of laugh at that. But back in the day, all those hundreds of years ago, societies, cultures, kingdoms, the entire populace truly believed that the world was flat. And so they based decisions. They saw the world through those eyes. That was their perception of the world. That it was not round. That's crazy thinking. Well, now, in the 21st century, we can look back at that and kind of think that was kind of funny. That people actually believed that actually people made decisions and guided their lives and developed maps and built kingdoms based on that belief. Well, to some extent, each of us walks around in life today with flat world thinking. We can have a certain belief about something. Now, even though fact and all the science proves that particular belief is wrong, we can believe something so strongly, so intensely, that becomes a conviction. And again, like those people hundreds of years ago thinking the world was flat, well, they based their perceptions, their decisions, and everything else based on that false premise. Well, we do the same. Now, I've been writing about low self-esteem in the last 3 posts. Well, this is to give you some skills today to talk about some skills that we can get over some of our beliefs. Now, everybody I know to some extent has low self-esteem in one section of their life or another. They may be very confident, have very strong self-worth in some aspects of their lives, but in small aspects or sometimes even large aspects of our lives, we can have low self-esteem. Now, low self-esteem, that I've written about, is based simply on a belief. Now, most of our beliefs about who we are and what we are and our values, well, a lot of those are shaped in our early years when we were very young. Now, if something has happened to us, lack of parental guidance, abuse, a bad experience, trauma, what have you. Well, back then, our young brains lacked the capacity and the ability to truly understand the consequences and all the variables to make a very concise conclusion, a rational decision based on those events. But with the lack of that, our brains, when we were so young, tried to the best of its ability to make sense of that. Well, that creates a pattern of thinking. And when we repeatedly think something, well, that becomes a habit of thought. And those habits of thought, like all habits, they don't go dormant. Consciously they go dormant, but they're still working in the back of our heart 24/7. Now, as we've talked about before, life moves on, the world moves on, we move on, but that programming, that pattern of thinking, that habit of thought is still working in the back of our heads. And this is unfortunate because we tend to have a baseline belief of who we are. Now, if I am someone with low self-esteem, and I have my own issues like anybody else, I might say I am unworthy, I am not valuable, I'm incompetent, I'm stupid, I'm silly, I'm an outsider. Now, these beliefs, though they are only opinions, and we know opinions or anything based on assumption, well, there is a large chance that they're false because we haven't included all the information. But when these beliefs are so ingrained into us, when they've been so part of who we are for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, they can feel like fact. And this is that flat world thinking. We can truly believe the world is flat. We can truly believe that we are this way or that way. And to protect that part of us where we have low self-esteem from being exposed, well, we will come up with certain behaviors. Now, two of the brain's mechanisms, as primitive as they are, is this. We can have anxious predictions. We can read the future and say, this is how the future is going to play out. They're going to see my incompetence. They're going to see the fraud that I am. They're going to see that I am a loser. If I do this, if I try to stretch, if I try to grow, well, that will only be a confirmation of myself as a loser, as unworthy or unvaluable. And these are these anxious predictions. So we set up precautions to avoid situations where we will expose this. Now again, we're basing these baseline beliefs based on fact. We truly think this is the truth. It's unshakable truth. Well, again, we know if it's based on assumption, it's going to be false. Now, our thoughts can also reflect in the past. So basically the way it breaks down is that usually 50% of our thoughts are in the future somewhere. And if we're coming from a place of low self-esteem, they're going to be anxious predictions of how things will fall apart and how things will go to hell. 40% of our thoughts are based in the past. And that tends to be where we have critical thoughts or self-critical thoughts, where we replay and rehatch and go over and over and over again. We ruminate over things that went south, that went sideways on us, or at least our perception of that. And then we'll have these self-critical thoughts where we label ourselves. Again, I am silly, I'm stupid, oh, it's dumb, why did I do that? And again, this reinforces low self-esteem. So we have self-critical thoughts when we reflect to the back, and then we have anxious predictions about the future. And so both of these mechanisms are there to sustain and maintain this low self-esteem, because the brain doesn't want a lot of change. It may say that, well, life is not perfect, but it ain't that bad. And so it will sustain itself. Now, helping clients to move past low self-esteem, well, it means about taking a chance, moving forward, and trying to experiment. Now, I've had my own issues with low self-esteem through the years. And I remember back in graduate school, my mentor, my professor, he told me, he says, Jason, sometimes you just have to, to find freedom, to find the strength and the motivation to move forward, to grow, you just got to let go. And freedom is about letting go. And so he said to me, he says, Jason, one thing I tell myself every day, he had his issues with low self-esteem in particular areas. He would say, just let go. Just let go. And I've taken that to heart, all these years. When I feel myself tensing up, becoming rigid in my thinking that, if I move into the future, this is how it's going to play out. And so I create precautionary behavior to try to stop that. Well, that's wrong. And what I do is I say to myself, just let go. And what do I mean by this is just, sometimes you have to take everything that you believe, everything that you think is right about your low self-esteem, about who you are, and just say it's, if everything that I believe is wrong, what am I left with? Well, a lot of the times when you first begin this, it's hard to sometimes figure out what am I left with. And your brain tries to process it, but it comes up with no answers. And then you'll find the brain will do its thing, and it'll throw up the same old excuses, the same old reasons why you shouldn't try, why you shouldn't stretch, why you shouldn't move forward. And the whole reason it does that is to sustain itself. In earlier posts, I talked about the brain being several systems, and these systems don't work in conjunction with each other. A lot of the times, these different brain systems, such as the reflect and the reactive mindsets, they're constantly in competition. And one of these systems is maintaining low self-esteem. It wants to survive, so it will throw anxious predictions. It will throw self-critical thoughts just to sustain itself. And it takes the form of automatic thoughts, meaning it's a habit of thought. We're not even conscious that these processes are working. And so one thing is about being present. 2 to 10% of our time is actually in the here and now. The more we can be in the here and now, the more we can understand and watch and play passive spectator to the antics of our brain. So just let go. Just let go of the beliefs that you think you are. Let go of that, even if it's just temporarily. As I tell a lot of clients, you have this situation come up. You have this chance to break this pattern and to start a new behavior, to create a new habit of thought that works for you instead of working against for you. And so as you move to the new situation, as hard as it may seem to you, try to leave your beliefs, try to leave your fixed thinking that sustains your low self-esteem at the entrance of the situation and just walk into the experience. Let the experience unfold. Experience, she's a brilliant teacher. She can be a hard teacher, but she can teach us in a sense that when we have experience, it breaks our beliefs about things. Well, it was the same thing with the flat world thinking. When the explorers constantly followed the horizon, that constant fear of falling off the edge, it never happened. And then one day they circumnavigate the world. Hey, the world's round. We need to change our belief system. So it's the same thing with you. Just let go, walk into the experience it. You don't have to take a giant step. You can have one foot in your comfort zone and one foot just outside, just to test the waters. And then you do it again and again and again. What happens? Well, your low self-esteem becomes stronger, it becomes healthier, it becomes more functional. And you have this life narrative, you have this experience that contributes to you. Also just letting go is just that. It's writing down your thoughts. When you have time, take a book and a pen and write down all these negative thoughts that come in your head, all these obstacles and hurdles that your brain throws at you to try to stop you from experiencing, so it maintains a low self-esteem. You record them. After a while, you declaw them. They lose their power. So, the dealing with low self-esteem, there are many ways, but sometimes the first way is just letting go of your beliefs, your fixed thinking, and just walk into the experience. It may feel tough, it will feel tough, but at the end of the experience, there's a certain freedom, there's a certain flexibility, there's a certain dropping of the shoulders, and taking a deep breath, and slowly a new system of thought will replace the dysfunctional system of thought that really isn't working for you. Well, until next week, keep well, and we'll speak soon.